We are live, everybody. It was really funny. I set this up for 9:30 and my clock on my stove is different than my clock on like the rest of the world. So it looks like I'm 2 minutes late. I hope you'll forgive me for this. Today we're going to do the homesteading update live. And the reason I'm doing that is if you have questions about the homestead, you can ask me, right? And that'll, I figured this would be facilitating that, or if you have comments. If you want to do that right now, I am monitoring the questions on YouTube through the StreamYard interface. I'm going to try to pull up Float because Float launched today their new system. And what that also means is it's a new system. So it may or may not work great today. If I can get Float to load and to load the live, then I will respond to those questions. And I am getting Odyssey up as well. So today is Friday. Welcome to the Friday show. This is just a weekly update we started doing that I have gotten a lot of positive feedback on from you all. And it's just about what's happened on the homestead in the last week. Now, you may have noticed I've been a little scarce this week. That's because by the end of last weekend, I was so exhausted, like my whole body ached. And that's because we did 4 pigs. And then there was a week of I doubled the number of shows I recorded that week by a mistake of telling people to record their interviews, because I do interview shows after a certain date, and everybody waited till like right after that date, and then all the interviews are there. So I've recorded all of the interviews for April. And then it was a GSD weekend that in a silly manner, I scheduled it without looking at my calendar, and there was a choir fundraiser Friday, and I'm one of the 3 main people doing the fundraiser. So I was gone Friday when people were arriving here. Thankfully, Sarah and Fred were here so they could, finish reheating the chili and serve it to people, because that was the deal. So I kind of went light this week, and then I thought we'd do this show. We're going to start doing this show live. I prefer to get it like knocked out of the park on Friday. So live at 9:30. I don't know if that'll be true every Friday, but this Friday it is. I was doing it to beat my coffee order shipment that's coming in. And that means that they are arriving early. So if I answer my phone in the middle of this live stream, that's what's going to happen. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I've got an update in all of the normal Friday categories. We're going to talk a little bit about CC's healing. We're going to talk about the in-ground gardens. We're going to talk about the GSD weekend. We're going to talk about what I'm foraging right now. The food storage, I have an update for you on that. Livestock, and what we did this week on the homestead instead of what we were supposed to do, because that totally happens. Good morning, Cindy. And of course, a holler neighbor update about infrastructure. And then I'll talk a little bit about finances and the pork we have for sale and how that's sort of lining out right now. So I hope you guys will enjoy all that. If there's something about my homestead you're wanting to know, put it in the comments in all caps. The deal is this: Odyssey Float's live stream just punked out on me, and I'm sure it's just because they literally just did a huge system update. And we'll try it again next week when it's had the weekend to get the gremlins worked out of it. So if you were trying to watch on Float, I hope I see you on YouTube. If you want to get your questions or comments in, all you need to do is write in all caps so I can see it. And I will be monitoring the Odyssey live stream as well over on this. If you see me looking over here, it's because I can only see the chats there. And we got a few people watching over on Odyssey too. So Odyssey folks, you can totally get your questions or comments in. I'll try to paste them over, but I can't always do that. It is what it is. And in order to do that, I have to pop the screen out. Okay, so with that, let's jump into the homestead update for April 1st. It's April Fool's Day. This is my grandma's birthday. We were actually talking yesterday, like how old would grandma have been had she made it to this year? She died at about 96, and that was a few years ago. So I think she would have been 99 years old today. It might have been 100. That's a long time. My grandma was an amazing woman. When she noticed that her memory was being affected by age in her 80s, she got a journal. She got one of these right here. And she would write the date, and she'd write everything she'd done that day. She did it that was important, like what she ate for breakfast, if she went number 2, if she took her walk, if she was taking any medicines, which she didn't take any medicines really, she would write down, I took this medicine at this time. And so by the time she was in her 90s, she was still doing that. And in such, she preserved her memory. So I'm hoping these Homestead journals will be like my foundation for I'm kind of keeping track of stuff going on. Okay, first segment today is forage. This is where we talk about what we're getting off the land. We got mushrooms. So oyster mushrooms and morels are coming on. I have found 0 mushrooms, and I'm going to keep my eye out for dryad settle because it's about the time for those to pop out. We just had warm, cold. It's warm again with the sun. So I'm going to run around to all the mushroom places I like to go to. And usually I'll find mushrooms when the sun has come back out. So thank you, weather gods, for giving me that. We also could have radishes in the garden had we been on our A game, but we're on our B game this year. So I don't have radishes. What I have are radish seeds in the ground. Dead nettle is up. And the way you eat dead nettle is you pick the leaves off the stalks. Don't try to eat the stalks. The stalks are square and kind of chewy. I mean, you can eat them, but it's not the best mouthfeel. Good morning, Dusty and Chelsea. Stinging nettle is at its prime. It's just before it's going to flower right now. And I used to have to walk way up in the woods to get my stinging nettle. And now, this is awesome. There's a patch down by where we have a little runoff area that we call the wash. There's a patch down there that started. I didn't plant it. Nature planted it. So we're just sort of giving it room to get bigger and bigger because stinging nettle is really good in soups. So you boil it, you make cream of stinging nettle soup. Really tasty. You can dry it and make tea out of it. It's a very good tea for a woman of my particular age going through certain transitions. It has lots of vitamin D and it's a soothing tea. It'll bring you some things you maybe don't have if you're having symptoms like I am, which are random body aches all the time. And I don't like random body aches, but I think it's because I'm like nutritionally imbalanced right now again. So working on being very careful about my vitamins, but adding stinging nettle. Now here's the thing about stinging nettle. It stings. You know how you get stinging nettle not to sting? You boil it or you dry it. So when you're handling it, what I do is I put on gloves and shove it in a bag and I dry it for tea and then it won't sting when you touch it. Or I handle it with gloves on and put it in the pot. Now, I've been stung by stinging nettle a few times. It really it kind of burns and then it makes your skin numb, which makes me wonder if I could use that as sort of a pain number for a wound if I ever had to. Hopefully, I never have to test that theory. There are a lot of other ways to make wounds, but that's another thing about stinging nettle. And then chickweed is up. The reason I know this is I've been clearing the garden. So chickweed's another green that you can feed to chickens, right? Or ducks. They love it. That's why it's called chickweed. Right now, people get their baby chicks. Feed them chickweed. That'll really help their gut develop some good nutritional, right? You can also put it fresh on salads. It's got sort of a nutty flavor. And you can also saute it with greens, like the leaves of your dead nettle, which you can also put watercress, which is also like peak right now is watercress. And then you can also add whatever you find. So in our garden, though, we've got lettuce, we've got sage, there's wild lettuce on the property, red sorrel. The red sorrel's doing great. I had like 2 little plants and I looked at the little plants and there were other little plants that were really, really tiny, like the size of my little pinky nail. And I separated those all out about 2 weeks ago. And now I've got a red sorrel patch. So that is the deal. Next, we also have dandelion flour coming. And the dandelion flour, so I was talking about dandelion greens last week. Dandelion flour, you collect the blooms and I dry them for tea. And that's just a really good midwinter tea. And so that's everything we're getting off the land. What's going to happen from here is we're getting like the early spring greens. And then we're going to get a bunch of tea stuff. And then it's going to be like, holy abundance, Batman. We've got all of the stuff coming on the land and then from the gardens, right? Because it's almost time. We've got about 4 weeks till we transplant tomatoes, peppers, and those sorts of things. Next segment is the food storage / pantry segment. This is where we talk about what's going on in the pantry. And I've made an executive decision. On Monday's episode, I do Tales from the Prepper Pantry. It's the same damn thing. We're not going to do that twice. So this segment will probably drop off of Friday unless there's something of note to say that I'm not going to say on Monday. Next segment is livestock. Here's what's up with the animals. I've got something for you. So we've had some trying days here this week. And I've heard from a lot of people about some trying days this week. And I walked outside and my buddy David was here. This was pig processing workshop or day. And he's got his dog with him because she's in heat. And so he's keeping his dog close in his car because you can't have dogs at my property because my dogs are also instructed to protect the property, right? And he was like, "Is that supposed to happen, Nicole? Is what supposed to happen?" And all of a sudden I see a goat go. So my goat, Clover, put her head around the corner, and she had gotten out. Well, this started a cascade of just rando goat things happening, and the goat's been getting out like every day. Yeah, so we're back to goats are running all over the property. If you've ever listened to my episode on goats will teach you about fencing. That's all I can say about that. She did not end up on my roof, thank God. But Tactical told me he finally figured out what she's doing. We have a gate in the back, and she's figured out how to push it open without getting zapped by the electric wire just enough that she can squeeze through. And here's the thing about when your goat gets out. Good morning, Jeff Benefield. When your goat gets out, if you get mad and yell at your goat, you know what your goat does? She runs away. If you pretend like you're happy to see the goat and you pet the goat, if she'll let you, and you walk away from the goat towards where you want the goat to go, and you look like you might have something interesting in your hands, like, oh, no, you can't have this, the goat will follow you. And in this way, end up back where you want her. Every time my goat gets out, though, she's kind of like, well, I got out of my darn thing, and the greens aren't any better out here than in there, and I want back in because my friend's in there. Yeah, that's what my goat does. So that's been fun. We're reevaluating the goat fence. It's sort of like the annual reevaluate of the goat fence. Update on Cece. Y'all know she got hurt in January, and she's been healing fast. However, apparently she's left the room. In the last week, her healing has completely stalled. So she has this raw area that's the size of, at this point, just the top 2 knuckles of my pinky, and it is shrinking 0%. And until that turns into skin, she has to wear a cone or pants. And I had made her 1 pair of pants. I'm going to make her another pair of pants this weekend because I have to wash them every day because they get wound ooze on them. And it's just slow going. And she's kind of like over it. And I'm kind of like over it because I'm walking her on a leash every day to go poop. I know more about that dog's functions than my own at this point. And it's just kind of, we've been feeling a little demoralized about it. She's still got her joy. I'm starting to lose my joy over this. I mean, I'm glad that she's okay, but I'd really like the last little bit of skin. Here's what I've tried. I've been doing comfrey salve on it. I've been doing a comfrey tincture. I am now looking for calendula. So if anybody has calendula, somebody texted me, I think on Float, and Float's not working for me exactly yet with their new launch. I need calendula. I'm going to try calendula for this last little bit because the comfrey, it did a good job, but it did not take me the last 5 yards of this illness. And then hopefully that'll help her rebuild her skin. We're still feeding her collagen. I'm washing it every day, all of those things. The ducks, this is cool. So every spring, the sun starts coming out, right? Ducks are laying 8 eggs a day. They're on year 4 of being ducks. So I should be losing egg production. We're going to add some more ducks this year. We want to get some muscovies, by the way, Lisa, if you're listening, Lisa Davis. I think we want to get some muscovies. So we're going to add that. But what I have are khaki Campbells. They're an egg-laying breed. And having 8 eggs a day means that at the spring workshop, which is at the end of this month of April, all of the eggs we serve are going to be from here, from our ducks. So if you're coming and you can't have duck eggs, you need to let me know because I do get a couple chicken eggs a day. I could probably fish some of those out, but it's duck eggs and it's going to be fantastic. One of the best things about the workshop, I think, is I get to cook y'all the same kind of food that we eat here in many cases, and it's a different experience than rubber chicken from a hotel at a typical conference. We have rats. Speaking of livestock, we have rats. You know what rats like? They like duck feed. You know what rats found? They figured out how to chew through the container we put our duck feed in. So now we're working on how to trap and eliminate rats from the coop. The first thing that makes the most sense is remove the food, right? But we're looking at all sorts of options for that right now. I'll keep you updated on how that goes. And then, of course, I made a decision with the Holler neighbors to raise 40 meat birds. So the ones that grow out pretty fast, the Cornish cross, not the jumbo Cornish cross. I got all females because the females grow slower. And we're getting those the week after the spring workshop so that we're not trying to also juggle taking care of chicks at the spring workshop. We'll run those through, and then there will be a processing class if anybody's interested. I'll have the information for that out next week or the week after. And I have to make a decision because, like, they grow out by 8 weeks. 8 weeks from when we get them is 1 week after Self-Reliance Festival, or it might be 9 weeks is 1 week after Self-Reliance Festival. So I may push them an extra week to have 2 weeks between the June 11th Self-Reliance Festival and the workshop, because there's this, like, it's a lot. We had early bird expire yesterday and everybody bought their tickets to go to Self-Reliance Festival. I'm drinking a lot of this Holler roast coffee over that one. I'm really glad that we are putting together. So we've put together an event committee with some different roles. If you've worked with us on Self-Reliance Festival before, by the way, you may be hearing from different people besides me and Mama Sauce, because we're dividing up duties to help make it so that we can get questions answered faster. So nice, Nicole. What's the trick? Jeff, what's the trick about what? What's the trick about what? I dispatched about 30 rats in the goat shed last weekend. All right, Carrie. Carrie needs to come out here and dispatch some rats. Needs to dispatch some rats. So anyway, there'll be another chicken processing class. I will also have chickens for sale for people who want to buy them. The one, like, thing we don't know is how feed's going to be, because Carrie's trick on the rats. The feed supply we have is locally grown, really high quality feed. They're starting to run out of stuff. So we're really looking at how do we augment the meat bird feed. And I'm really excited to look at Billy Bond's chicken tractor on steroids method that he does, where he doesn't get external feed. I do know the theory behind how he does that, and we may try some of those tactics here on those baby chicks. Okay, next segment. Are you ready? Woo! What we did instead of grow food or do any homesteading this week. This segment is just a special for this week because holy slap me in the face, Batman. This week, that's a good thing I took this week off because I had to deal with a bunch of crap this week. Yeah. It was like, I think I need a shaman to come out here and bless my property and bless the Holler at this point, because there has been so much bad juju here and things just going crazy, absolutely crazy. Stuff that should not happen is happening. We have planned so this stuff won't happen. So I sat Tactical down, who should totally come up here and give his own 2 cents on this week if he is anywhere nearby. This week, we did a lot of things. And this is the thing about homesteading. The reason I have it in this show is you start a homestead. You have a system. It's going great. And then this week happens. And you know what happens? You're not homesteading. You're fixing shit is what you're doing, right? That's what you're doing. And so here's just a small list of things we did on the homestead that had nothing to do with homesteading, really, except for that we need this place to work. 1, at base camp. I should just save this one for Tactical if he'd just come up. Gonna skip that one. 1, the pump house. So I had this awesome GSD weekend where people came out. We did a bunch of stuff. It's called Operation Eyesore. Most of what we did was take stuff to the dump. We framed in the outdoor shower. I'll talk more about that later. And there's a rule around here that if the water's going to go out, because my house is not on city water, if the water's going to go out, it shall go out when there are people here who want showers and water, and I'm doing dishes, and right. We actually have a sign for LFTN 22 that says number of events without plumbing problems and has a big old 0 on it. We're hoping to get through this year. Last year we almost made it through, and then there was a problem at the very end. So we get through the GSD weekend. I'm like, yes, everybody left. It's 3 p.m. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go take a nice hot soak in the tub because I'm super tired. Turn the water on. Luckily, I left my clothes on. And it was like, no water. I'm bone tired. Nighthawk's bone tired. Tactical's bone tired. I don't know if Jenny was bone tired. I'm pretty sure Jenny was bone tired. She was not involved in the repair of this. I get on Zello. I'm like, hey, Tactical, there's no water. I hear this. I'll go check it out. And he trundles down the hill. And I wait. And I wait. And my whole right side is like aching and not functioning very well by that point because I'm super tired. And the right side of my body just like completely freaking punks out when I'm tired. Don't hear anything. So I get on Zello and I say, hey, how's it going? And he says, I think this pump might be crapped out. I'm like, which pump? He's like, the one from the spring. Because I have a system where there's a pump at the spring. It pumps into a holding tank, and it pumps from the holding tank to my house so that the gallons per minute not matching the pole doesn't cause a problem. What had happened is the spring pump was no longer filling the cistern, and the cistern had gone empty on a Sunday night, and we had trouble. Boy, we had trouble. And so I was like, Self, what could cause this pump to go out, Self? Because it's a pretty relatively not old pump. And Self said, Nicole, you've had a lot of rain events, like flooding level rain events. And when you have lots of flooding level rain events, you know what happens, Nicole? Shit gets in your water. And you have sediment filters, Nicole, and sometimes those plug up. And Sarah was cleaning the coolers, and she said, because she's blind, she said she felt a lot of grit in the water, and that shouldn't be because there are 2 sediment filters between the bottom of the hill and water coming out at the top of the hill. So, Nicole, perhaps instead of the pump being out, maybe it's the sediment filter. And I walked down the hill because, talking on Zello when you're grumpy doesn't work. And we were both grumpy at this point. We both wanted water. I'm sure he wanted a shower too. I said, hey, Tactical. He's like, what? I said, how's that filter look? Oh, it's pretty clogged up. Think we should change that? You think that might fix the problem? Can't hurt. So I trundle back up the hill and I get the filter and I bring it back down. I'm like, here's the filter. And he's down there, mentally cursing, but not loudly cursing. And I'm like, do you need the tool? He's like, there's no tool down here. So I go back up the hill and I get the tool that unscrews it and I come back down the hill. And then he pulls the filter out. And of course, there's like crap in the casing, and he walks to the creek to clean that because we don't have any water. And then he puts it back in. Sure enough, water started filling again. And about half an hour later, we had water. So we did that instead of homesteading. Now, because I mentioned that himself should come up here, why don't you talk to us about the hot water heater? Come on in. Tactical Redneck is joining the live stream. And Dusty, I don't know why my right side. That's my right side. Sit down. So, stop being slow. What happened? So, how there were storms coming. So I'm going to set the foundation. There were storms coming. There might be tornadoes. They were going to be through at like 8 or 9 o'clock. And you know what happens? We get a text from Jenny. What'd that text say?
Which one?
There's water spewing all over my basement from the water heater. Yeah.
So my first hope was that it was the relief valve, which it was. I mean, it helped she moved the mic closer to me, but hey. But it was the relief valve, and I wound up putting a pressure gauge on the system, and the gauge stops at 200 psi. And as soon as I cracked the valve to see what the pressure was, it instantly, like within 1 to 2 seconds, spiked the gauge all the way out. So, well in excess of 200 psi, which, according to most plumbers, a house should be at 50 to 60. The relief valve pops at 150. So, yeah.
So we had a lot of pressure coming from the city water at the rental.
So then this whole evolution to, I wasn't sure if the relief valve was still popping because the relief valve was broke, or whether it was just the system was still overpressurized. So go to town, get parts, come back, and it was one thing after another. Can't find the tire inflator to set the pressure in the expansion tank. So Nighthawk picks one up, brings it over. Cool. Pull it out of the packaging. It doesn't have the quick disconnect fitting on it. Why you would sell something like that without all of the pieces and parts is beyond me. So I come back over, grab a fitting, go back, put it on. Apparently, somehow a pressure washer fitting ended up in with the air compressor fittings, so it wouldn't connect. So I had to take it back off, come back over, grab a different fitting. So it's just one thing after another like that for the whole day. I was just to the point where I was like, if I have to touch anything else, I'm just going to set it on fire. Yeah. I mean, dynamite if I had it, but
Yeah, so he got it all back together, and get out of my chair.
Sit down, get up, sit down, get up.
You can bring your own chair. So I get it. He comes back over, and at this point, he's been working on it since like when he woke up to all the way till, I don't know, 6:30 last night. And I was like, well, I better be nice and make somebody dinner tonight, because he was doing most of the work. I was doing other things here. And he comes back, and there's like this storm cloud over his head following him around the holler. And I'm like, rough day? And he's like, rockin', frackin', 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 frackin'. And we won't repeat what he said, but it had F's in it. And yeah, and I said, so what's the plan for tomorrow? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. So he spent all day yesterday not putting in garden beds, not finishing the outdoor shower, not dealing with pig water, not anything. It was all plumbing. Even when he wasn't over at Jenny's doing plumbing actively, he was over here pre-doing plumbing, or he was driving to the plumbing store. How many trips to the plumbing store happened? Two, but we needed 3. We needed 3 trips. But so today, what are you doing instead of homesteading? Close that door.
Right now, I'm standing here.
He's standing here doing a podcast. That totally happens. More plumbing? Are you doing more plumbing?
More plumbing is going to happen. So last night, I was like, I'm not even going to try to plan today out because there's just no point at this point. And the only thing that I'm thinking that I'm going to really try to do tomorrow is something productively destructive. And when I say productively destructive, I get to do something violent with a saw, but it's actually beneficial because it's something like cutting privet trees down or a locust tree down or something like that.
Mayhem says that sounds like homesteading to me.
Yeah. Guess what I was trying to do when I was asked to come in here?
Hey, you're the idiot who said you were willing to tell that story. So here's what happened, guys. The city water had a part fail that reduces the pressure coming, because we're down in a holler coming down the hill. Second time it's happened in 6 years. And I didn't own the house when it happened the first time. I thought a reducer was on that house. A reducer is not on that house. And so the first thing that happened is it blew that water heater. The second thing that happened, and we thought just a part was out, went overnight. Next thing that happens, we get a message from Jenny that there's a leak under her sink. And I'm like, that sounds like a pressure problem. And fixed the leak under her sink. And it was, of course, one of her heavy massage therapy days. So she was seeing clients and we couldn't be over there banging around while people are trying to get a peaceful massage. She needed water because you need water to wash your hands and stuff. And by the end of the day, she had water again. And now today, I've heard from Jenny, and Tactical's going to be doing more plumbing today because the water's not hot enough, which means either there's a setting on the water heater that needs to change or an element's out. Those are your two options, right?
It could be the reduced pressure.
And then,
I'm going to find out.
Yeah, and then there's reduced pressure. So her water pressure is reduced. So we may need to dial that up a bit. So that happened. On Monday, I put the announcement out, I'm taking the day off. And you know what I did? First thing in the morning, I said, hey, Tactical, when you get done with whatever you were doing at Jenny's, because you were at Jenny's for some reason on Monday doing something too. Can you come here and look at my kitchen sink link? Yeah, my kitchen sink, did it crack a brass fitting?
I don't know. I haven't taken that completely apart, but it was one of the actual PEX crump fittings that was actually leaking. It's the first time I've ever actually seen that in person. I've heard about it, but I've never actually seen it.
So flukish, weird leak under my sink got fixed right away because we had enough backup. So, yeah, as you can see, what we did all week was plumbing. More plumbing. It was like there were plumbing ghosts in my system again. That's why I'm saying I need to have a shaman out here to exorcise the plumbing demons from my property. What we did not do was start seedlings. Tactical has some started. I was supposed to start seedlings on Monday, and it is now Friday, and I think I'm actually getting seeds in pots 5 days later. Is this a problem for the timeline of the garden? Not so much, but it's good. By the way, I just wanted you to tell that story. So if you want to go cut things up, you totally can.
I have to put the trailer up, pick up like what, 1,200 pounds of coffee?
Oh yeah, I have 1,800 pounds of coffee arriving today.
1,500 pounds.
Hey, we don't stop around here, even when we take a week off. Okay, so that's what we did instead of homesteading this weekend. Next segment is grow. This is where we talk about growing the food that we grow. Here's the amazing thing, guys. Sending love from Atomic City, Oak Ridge. All right. Hopefully you don't get hit if we go to, yeah, you know what I mean. I know where Oak Ridge is, and I know what's there. Our garden beds are in the in-ground garden. So I have Sunshine Plot up the hill, Moonshine Plot down the hill. Moonshine Plot is a pig pasture right now. Sunshine Plot has not been really grown in except for perennials for 5 years while I've been growing the coffee business. And last year we were going to plant in it, but it never locked in. And this year I was like, dude, you're on the homestead with me here. We should grow more food. You have more time to do the gardens. Do you want to do the gardens? And he's like, yeah. And so we came up with a plan to put in beds. We tarped it over for the winter. We did a bunch of stuff to get ready. And last week we did like rotational forking, 20 minutes at a time, so that not any one person had to do it for an hour. And then this week there were rains coming. And when the ground gets too wet, it's hard to work the ground. So there was a little bit of pressure early in the week to get the beds like totally finally in. We made a decision, because I don't have a collection of rotting wood chips like I usually do, to just buy pine chips from the store. And we put in 4 4-foot wide beds and 2 narrower beds up there that are probably, 30, 60 feet long. So we've got those in. We've got them roughed up. We've got them mulched in. We've got cardboard on the pathways between them. I've got cedar chips coming in, like just wood chips from the cedar mill coming today to put in the pathways between the beds. And they're all in. And because they're all in, I was able to plant one of the beds that's going to have primarily green beans as its purpose. I have beets, I have carrots, and I have radish. I have radish where the beans are going to go because they take about 30 to 45 days to turn into radishes. And right about the time they're turning into radishes, I can put the green bean seeds in because the ground will be warm enough. So we'll be succession planting that. We made the trellising plan. Trellising's not in yet for the other 3 4-foot beds where we're going to have cucumbers, squash, peppers, and maybe some tomatoes, because most of my tomatoes I grow down here in my zone 1 where I can keep my eye on them. We baby tomatoes around here. So that's all in. And that's super exciting because that's like huge progress. That's been the big push, is getting that to the point where we can plant it. I do wish I had been able to put more rabbit manure up there than I have been able to put up. But what's happening now is I'm moving small amounts of rabbit manure once or twice a week from the rabbit area. The brassicas, so the cabbage, the whatever is broccoli, all that sort of stuff is in the aquaponics system with plenty of rabbit poop. And every year I plant those in the early spring, and every year they get eaten by random pests. And I'm an organic gardener, so I let pests have them. I usually end up getting brassica greens at this time of year. When I've been successful, I was successful with broccoli last year for the first year here, and we just had an uncommonly long cold spring, so they didn't bolt as quickly. And I also had put them in a new place on the hillside garden, so I think the pests hadn't figured out they were there. So those are in. And then, of course, we'll be seeding. I'm going to be direct seeding outside throughout the weekend. So I've got nasturtium to go in. I've got various herbs going into pots. I have herbs ready to transplant. I have sage and thyme going out as ground cover on the hillside. So lots of planting activities going to happen all weekend, while I also pre-cook food for the Living Free and Tennessee Spring Workshop, because we also got all of the beef chili is like cooked in bags in the freezer so that it's ready to just be reheated for the workshop. I need to do the sweet potato chili next. I got the bacon curing so that we can smoke the bacon in about 2 weeks. That'll be served at the workshop. That's from what? The pigs from here, right? We've got all sorts of projects like that. And it's cheese making season, and I'm making I wish I could get my hands on some cow's milk. I'll have to see if Jake has some. I may be able to have some cheddars ready to taste by then, or I may just cut into some of my aging cheddars right now. And of course, we'll have feta cheese and some other cheeses at the workshop that were made right here at the Holler Homestead. That's all happening. Okay. Next segment is Holler Neighbors / community. The Holler Neighbors have been, well, helping each other out a lot, just because Jenny's had all the plumbing problems. And poor Nighthawk, every time he comes home from his town job, has to stop by somewhere and buy something to go as a fitting in somewhere. He's like started just checking it. Hey, I'm on my way home. What do you need from the hardware store? That's totally happening. Last weekend was a GSD weekend. And what that is get shit done. And the idea is we just like flash mob somebody's homestead. And every year before the spring workshop, we do something here. What we did this year was Operation Eyesore, because we did the whole hillside project and Taj Mahal, and there are things everywhere where they don't go. There are things that needed to go to the dump. There was lumber that needed to be sorted, like what's usable, what's not usable, that sort of thing. And the outdoor shower got taken out and needs to be rebuilt by the end of this month. And it's being rebuilt in a different place. In addition, trees are down at all properties, and people camp on all properties while they're here because we're all next door neighbors. So it was a big deal, and I called it Operation Eyesore. And I told people, let me know if you're coming. Some people let me know. Some people just showed up. That was fine. Some people contacted me at the last minute and said, hey, can I come out? One of whom was an electrician. So we started running wiring for Taj Mahal off of my roasting shack, because Taj Mahal is an event space. The roasting shack is a business. Separate electrical service for me. And then that's a write-off on the business, so that my house electricity now is separate from the business electricity, which is awesome. So because that's an event space, like all the stuff I do out there is event related and business related. So we're putting that off of a feed from the roasting shack, which is a little bit more involved because it's touching my house than just pulling it off my house. Anyway, Miles said, hey, you need an electrician? I'm like, I always need an electrician out here, Miles. So he came out. I got to go to the electrical store. And here's what I learned about GSD weekends, or relearned. One, unless I have somebody hired to feed everybody, I'm going to be cooking and doing dishes the entire time, because I was cooking and doing dishes the entire time. We had 15 people here, and I answered questions. And I went to the hardware store one time. That's all I did. But We had a team on the lumber pile getting it organized. They took a couple trips to the dumpster. We moved all of the roofing material that had been pulled out and piled it neatly where it needs to go. We cleaned up the big giant down tree at Jenny's is cleaned up and split up, although the log splitter got broken in the process. I need to have it welded. That got done. There was a bonfire on Friday night, if anybody was around Friday night, which I think it was only Nighthawk burning that one up. And that was just the branches from the tree that went down at Jenny's. We got the outdoor shower is now up on the hillside, and there's a stairway up to it, and it's a frame that's suspended. That got all framed in. Some bourbon was drunk. A campfire was had. Karaoke was sung, but not through my karaoke system, just like playing cell phones and singing the cell phone musics around the fire. We had fun doing that. Great time was had. 15 people were here. 15 people. And oh, this is big. The outhouse door that was hung the wrong way like 4 years ago is hung the right way, so you can walk. So there's like a little deck and you go around a corner, and then you had to walk around the door and go in from the other side, right? Now you can go around the corner and it opens out. It's great. So we had a great time. The coolers were scrubbed and bleached because they had been hosed out, but not bleached from the hog processing. And we never had raw meat in there. Like, it was always in bags, but I just skis, just need to make sure. So Sarah got that done for us. The whole place is looking a lot better. There's a lot more work to do between now and the workshop. I'm not doing another GSD weekend, but guys, this is the power of community. And one of my favorite things about GSD weekends, it's not just that all the work gets done, because that's really cool that people are willing to come out here and do a bunch of work. Like, poor Eric Myers has been here 2 weekends in a row, like one weekend helping with pigs, the other doing his body must hurt from all the work he did over here. It's hanging out with people. It's seeing, like having a chance to actually talk. I usually at a GSD weekend get a person or two I've never met come out who just listens to the podcast, and I get to know new people from our community when that happens. And I think that's really fun. And because we've got something to do, it's not like this awkward sitting around. So what's your name? My name is Melvin. Hi, Melvin. What do you do? I'm an accountant. Oh, great. You don't have those sorts of awkward conversations. It's more, hey, how are we going to get this done? Who's going to do what role? And because of that, it tears down some of those getting to know you things. And when you've been troubleshooting problems together, it makes a huge difference. So I was really excited about that. We're not doing any more GSD weekends before the workshop because I am more tired than I have ever been in my life right now. I part of why I took Monday off is like I was so tired, my body hurt. The right side of my body hurts more than the left side. Somebody asked why. I don't know why, but that always happens. I think it might be related to a lower back thing going on, and I may eventually get that checked out. And the real reason I'm tired is I haven't stopped. Like at the beginning, so I took a little break over Christmas, but I didn't really recoup during that break as much as I needed to. And then from January 1st till now, it has been one sucker punch after another. And I don't like to complain about stuff because I feel like if I just say, today can F right off, every time I say that, today F's off a little bit more in my direction. And I think it's important to do what I can every day. But there's just been a lot of stuff that keeps happening. And it's big stuff like furnaces going out and dogs getting hurt. And oh yeah, we had COVID here. And then, blah, 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 blah. A lot of really good stuff has happened too. And that's why I keep saying, if I dwell in the negative, I don't see like Self-Reliance Festival was a success. It doubled in size. It's going to double again. This is really exciting because all these people are getting new tools on how to take control of their lives. It's a great way to reach people. In fact, if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, selfreliancefestival.com. If Mama Sauce isn't up yet, you probably can still get the early bird rate of $35 right now, but it is going up to $60, right? It's going up to $60 today, officially. It's just, I don't know if anybody did that yet. Anyway, it's a great way to get started. We got Jack Spirko speaking there. We've got Billy Bond speaking there. With all sorts of cool things. So Joel Riles that you heard last week, he's going to come speak. It's going to be really cool. But I'm tired and I'm an introvert. And so at the end of that weekend, I was really happy it got done. It was great to hang out with everybody. I'm ready to have a few weekends alone. So what we've decided is that we're doing the bulk of the work, and maybe having to hire some people in to get the rest of everything cleaned up from Taj Mahal build and the lights in. We're doing the bulk of that not on weekends. Miles, yes, you are allowed to come out on the weekend if you want to finish the wiring. But we're reducing the number of people here on the weekends so I can sort of like have moments with my coffee where I'm not under pressure to get the coffee orders out before the mail deadline or a podcast recorded, and poke around, doing things one at a time the way I want to. So that's sort of the deal. And Jeff says, once I get moved to Northwest Arkansas next month, I want to make it to at least one GSD weekend. Yes, Jeff, you should totally come up to a GSD weekend sometime. We're going to have some other ones in the community that are not at my house that I'll totally talk about on the podcast if the people want me to, because there are a number of people who have GSD weekends. One of them is at Mark Alexander's house. And I think at some point we're going to go out there and put in trenches and she's changing, his wife, because Mark passed away, is changing how she gets her water to her house. So she's having a well put in, and I believe there will be some things related to that. Anyway, I love GSD weekends. And I just want to thank everybody who came here. I was really thankful you were here, even if I looked tired the whole time. I hope the food was good. We smoked part of the pork, and that was the first time I ate any of the pork that we had, and it was fan-flippin-tastic. I took a ham cut, so it was not a cured ham, and I smoked it for, I think it was in there for 14 hours, and I finished it in the oven because it just wasn't quite getting up to temp in the outdoor smoker. And it was served late on Saturday night, like 7:30, because I was intending to serve it at 6. That didn't happen. And nobody minded. I just put appetizers out, right? Nobody minded. They were all like super happy having, some were having some beverages, some were having some non-alcoholic beverages, hanging out, having a good time. It was a little cold, so a lot of them were in my house. And when that ham came out, there was no ham left. There was like 2 pieces of ham left at the end of that. It was really, really good. So anyway, Jeff says, I highly recommend Self-Reliance Festival. If you are thinking of going, yeah, you should totally go. It's really fun. So is my spring workshop. Oh, yeah. There's also 1 ticket available for my spring workshop because somebody had to cancel. And if you've been thinking about coming and want to come, let me know, because we can transfer them, but it's non-refundable because I've already bought the food for her deposit. And I would love to be able to hook her up with that switch out. Okay, last segment of today. Last 2 segments. Infrastructure. This is where we talk about the oft overlooked thing that people do not do on their homesteads. That's called put in the things that need to be put in to contain the animals, to grow the beds, to keep the coyotes out. Infrastructure. How many times have I done my pump house and yet it still goes out? That's right. That totally happens. Today, the only thing we got, I talked to Tactical. I'm like, what happened? He was like, plumbing happened, Nicole. I was like, okay. But we framed in the outdoor shower at the GSD weekend, and that's the hardest part. So now we have to paint that. I have figured out the kind of flooring I want in there, which changes how the drain is and makes it easier. He's got a way to plumb it in that will insulate the pipes, so we may not need to turn it off in the winter. I'd love to be able to go out on a really flipping cold day and take an outdoor shower. I'm just saying. Anyway, so that's there. And the reason an outdoor shower is important for us is that we do events, but also when I'm out there working, and I'll just sit down when I'm weeding, and I get really dirty, like muddy, all of it on the homestead. It's actually kind of nice, especially in the summer, to wash the chiggers off and stuff. You can just run to the outdoor shower, take a shower, come in the house, and I don't track all that crap into my house. And then my house, which is in the country, it's a real struggle to keep the dirt out of your house because it just tracks in on all the animals and all the people. And, me covered in mud, not coming into the house is awesome. So I'm looking forward to that. And it's kind of nice. I mean, like, put your little starry romantic homestead eyes on. It's dark out. The stars are up. It's 75 degrees outside or 80 degrees outside. Then you go out and you take a nice shower by yourself. Yeah, it's a peaceful thing too. So I really do like that. And then, of course, the last segment is finances. This is where we talk about either reducing what we need to spend here or making money. And last week I told you I'm going to have pork for sale, and a lot of you have reached out. The problem is I don't know how much pork I have for sale because I need to go back through and document what's in there, finish making the breakfast sausage, finish, all of those things. So here's what's going to happen with that is I'm going to post specific amounts of pork. There's one person who's already told me what they want. So Eric, you don't need to do this, but I will end up posting what's available for sale, and you can tell me what you want and come pick it up. I also do have chickens for sale. I think one of you is buying a couple chickens, but I'll have a few more chickens for sale from last year's batch that we finished. And then, of course, once the new chickens come in, we'll have new chickens for sale. And all of that helps us sort of offset, right, the costs of what we're doing here and brings a little money back into the homestead, which is super important. Anyway, that is the homesteading update for today. And you know what? I have text messages, so maybe the coffee is here. Hopefully Tactical's listening. Nope. Coffee's not here yet, Tactical. What this means is I get to right after this, I'm going to hear from the truck that has 1,800 pounds of green coffee beans. And he's going to tell me, where he is and that we need to come meet him. And then I get to do what I call coffee fit. That's right. It's not CrossFit. It's coffee fit, where you herc 120 to 140 pound bags from the truck into the trailer, from the trailer into the storage unit. Everybody's favorite day. If Nighthawk's listening to this, we're going to need your four-wheeler here later tonight. Anyway, we do have one question before we sign off. Would you be willing to share your breakfast sausage recipe? Cindy, I will share my breakfast sausage recipe. It comes from my grandfather, Grandpa Darby, who had a restaurant in Newberg, Oregon called Darby's. And anybody who is from Newberg or has family in Newberg probably knew him. And I've had a couple of you reach out when you hear me say that. You're like, what? So the thing, Cindy, is that I don't have it memorized. So it has some sage and it has some garlic and some other stuff. So by next Friday, I promised you, Cindy, I will have that recipe up. And if it's not in our membership portal as a recipe of the week, I'll make sure that we add that to the lineup. It might already be in there. Actually, I could just look that up. But Darby's famous breakfast sausage recipe will come out, and that is the recipe I am using for this set of things. It's just really tasty. So let me just do a really quick search. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show today. If you enjoy the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can support our sponsor, Hollow Roast Coffee. Yeah, I am. I'm going to add sponsors, guys. So if you're interested in sponsoring the show, Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com. Of course, Hollow Roast will be one of our early sponsors. I've got a couple other people who have wanted to sponsor for years. And so I decided we will launch the sponsorship program. I'll start doing one or two sponsors at the beginning of the show. And from that point, you'll see, it's not going to be invasive. I'm not going to interrupt the show like halfway through. Here's a commercial. I'm not going to do that to y'all. And that sausage recipe will be up next week or the week after as the recipe of the week. Because the second way you can support the show is become a member. Go to livingfreeintennessee.com. We have a new recipe that comes out every week. As I said, Darby's recipe will come out soon because I see it's not on there. I don't know why it's not on there. I got to go look it up, though. I had to look it up anyway, Cindy. So we'll have that out, and I will talk about it on the show so that if you're not a member, you can do that. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.